One. All right, so we're live. So I played a short little clip. It really wasn't that short. It was about 17 minutes while everybody was eating. Just an overview of it's gonna take a minute to show up on the screen. It's kind of like a lag. Yeah. There you go. Minute to show up on the screen. It's kind of like a lag. Right. And so but nonetheless, though, I played that little short clip. I wanted to play it because the verbiage that was going in the video that I played, it kind of went in with the lesson, right? The title of this lesson is called PURIM, such a time as this, right? And today we're going to be talking about such a time as this, and we can all kind of relate it to our own lives. In certain aspects of our lives that we've been chosen for such a time as this, just like Esther was. So we're going to read through a few things just to kind of bring to light a few things that some people may read over in the Bible, didn't think about or didn't think of it in that way, right? So first and foremost, we want to give all glory and honor to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob through his son, who he sent as an instrument of salvation for the nation. And that nation is Israel, right? Let me go ahead and share my screen. Do I got any volunteers for the first precepts? The first one we're going to start at Esther 2 and verse 7. Esther 2 and verse 7. Right, let me make
the book of Esther.
Hold on one second. All right, you can go ahead.
The book of Esther, chapter 2 and verse 7. And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, whom Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter.
Right, and then, as we read through this, I'm gonna be teaching myself, you know what I'm saying, and things that stand out for me. What we just read in that verse, a lot of people see it as just knowing more about Hadassah or Esther, but it's a foreshadowing and a foretelling. Everything's a foreshadowing and a foretelling of Christ and Christ's father, right? We know that Christ came for who? The fatherless, right? Hadassah or Esther was fatherless, right? We see what God ultimately did for her was took an orphan, right? Which we are all being adopted back in, took an orphan and made her a queen, right? We know that he's going to be doing that to us. At one point, we were all fatherless. We didn't have the truth. We didn't understand who we were according to the Bible. We were fatherless. And now that we got our father back, he's going to make us kings and queens, right? So, that's one way to look at that. Let's read verse 8.
Verse 8. So it came to pass when the king's commandment and his decree was heard, and when many maidens were gathered together unto Susan the palace, to the custody of Hegai, that Esther was born also unto the king's house, to the custody of Hegai, keeper of the woman.
Right. Let's read the next verse, verse 9.
Verse 9, and the maiden pleased him, and she obtained kindness of him, and he speedily gave her things for purification, with such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens, which were meet to be given her out of the king's house, and he preferred her and her maids unto the best place of the house of the women.
Right. And so we know as we come to this knowledge of the truth and we start keeping the commandments, we know that there's certain promises for us that he would make us at peace with our enemies. He would give us favor in captivity and things of that nature. And we see that he's acting that out through Esther as well. So all of this stuff, like I said, man, is continuing to foreshadow things that are coming to pass in the future, which we know as prophecy, right? Let's read verse 10.
Verse 10. Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred.
Say that one more time.
Esther had not showed her people nor her kindred.
Right.
For Mordecai had charged her that she should not show it.
Right. And so what I want to bring out here is this, right? And I think I brought this out last Purim. Discretion, right? discretion is a big part of getting to where you want to get to, right? We've all coming into this truth and this knowledge. We've all had instances where we can say, you know what? I'm not going to tell anybody until God brings it to light, right? I'm pretty sure if we ask for a raise of hand, everybody's had an instance in their life where they kept something discreet for a time until they got their so-called blessing or their so-called elevation, right? Or their so-called prayers answered to, right? And we know that simply just because we have to guard our spirits. We have to guard the things that are for us, right? Now, did Esther know why she was keeping it secret? She probably didn't, but she was just being obedient to what Mordecai said, right? Because Mordecai understood things not from a carnal sense, but from a spiritual sense. And we'll get into that, right? Let's read verse 11, I think.
Verse 11. And Mordecai walked every day before the court of the women's house to know how Esther did and what should become of her.
Right? So he was checking up on her, right? And that's kind of how, so Mordecai in this aspect is wisdom, right? He's kind of acting as wisdom, right? When we go to Sirach, I forgot the chapter, but Sirach tells us that wisdom tries us and she walks by us and tries us by her laws. And she even torments us by God's truth, right? God's law, right? So Mordecai is checking up on her to see how she's doing and walking with Esther, right? And Esther might not know that Mordecai is walking with her. Esther might not know that he's checking up on her, but wisdom is always going to be there, right? And the Holy Spirit is always going to be with us as well. And it's always going to lead us and guide us to all truth. And we can either listen to it or we can ignore it, right? Let's go to verse 12. Hold on one second. That might be it on this. Right? That might be on this. So what I wanted to take from that real quick in Esther 2 is discretion, right? And when we think about discretion, some other things come to mind. When we talk about Rahab, right? Who can tell me a little bit about Rahab and what she's known for in the Bible? By a show of hands, anybody? Go ahead, Q. She hid the Hebrews, right? Right, and that was able to what for her?
To basically keep her and her family safe.
Right, kept her and her family safe through discretion, right? I'm going somewhere with this, right? Through discretion, Rahab was able to save her family, right? Something else that comes to mind is Judith, right? Does anybody know the story of Judith? Can anybody kind of give me an overview of what Judith is known for in the Bible? I know she did a lot. I know it was a long story. Go ahead, Aliyah.
So, she subsequently used farmers and they end up oppressing, trying to basically receive our people and take them over, take them captive, and she ended up subsequently using him and going into his tent and trying to do it.
So she subtly used him, right? So how was she being subtle though? Like if you described her subtleness, what was she using as a tactic? Her beauty, right? And in her beauty, did she know that she was going to do something that he didn't?
I would say she did. She had a
right.
She had a tent to do that.
Right. Right.
Use discretion.
She used discretion. That's what I was getting to, right? She used discretion. She didn't let it be known what her plans were, right? She didn't really let it be known who she really was, right? She used her discretion, and what happened? And what did that do for the people?
That gave them hope. They gave them hope. Not only they gave them hope, but the enemy, they didn't leave.
Right. So she ended up saving her people. Right. So discretion ended up using her to save her people, just like Rahab ended using discretion to save her family. Right.
If I'm not mistaken, in that story, I know it was she had a discretion amongst the commander that she chopped the head off, but right before she went, I know she had that whole conversation with her people, the council. But did she tell them what she was gonna do, or did she just do it?
She didn't tell them what she was.
So she had discretion even amongst her own people too.
Yeah. Right.
And another one that comes to mind is Moses, but not just Moses. Moses' mom, right?
Mhm.
And if you keep in mind what I'm using here, I'm using women because we're talking about Esther. So we're using Rahab, Judith, and Moses' mom, right? Because a lot of people attribute Moses, but what Moses' mom did in the very beginning was key, right? Was she not very discreet? Anybody can describe to me what Moses' mom did?
It was, it was going around killing all the Hebrew babies and
Right, the male specifically, right?
the male specifically, and to save his life, she put him in a basket and sent him down the river.
Right, she sent him down the river. Would you say that's discreet?
It was discreet.
That's not the discretion I'm talking about, though. What else happened?
She hit him for 3 months.
She ended up being like the Pharaoh's like handmaid or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so she was able to still take care of him with discretion.
Right, so she was taking care of her own baby, and she was discreet, and that discretion allowed Moses to live, and Moses ended up what? Saving the nation, right? So that discretion from Moses' mom, right, led to salvation as well. So I'm gonna read just that right here in Exodus real quick about Moses' mother. Exodus 2, starting at verse 1, we're gonna read 1 through 8, right? Just so we can have that in our mind, right? If somebody can read it, you got that? We'll go back to you then. Exodus 2 and 1.
Exodus chapter 2, start at verse 1. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took to wife a daughter of Levi.
Right.
And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him, that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months.
Right. So she hid him 3 months. That's the first act of discretion, right? The first act of discretion was she was hiding him. If she didn't hide him and she was just scary, I'm sure there was some of our women that just, they thought there was no way and they just gave up, right? But she, she was like, you know what? Even if they kill me, I'm gonna hide my son, right? Keep going.
And when verse 3, and when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrush, and daubed it, and slimed it with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river brink.
Right. So here, we see a lot of things in the Bible that are repetitive. Here we see another ark, right? And we know through the first ark, right, there were some souls saved. And we're gonna get into that too. But I just want to let y'all know that when we read in the Bible, man, it's always foreshadowing, foretellings. It's always a recurring event that's happening to connect each chapter together, each book together, right? Let's read verse 4.
Verse 4, and his sister stood afar off to wit what would be done of him.
Right.
Verse 5, and the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by her riverside. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it.
Right.
And when she had opened it, she saw the child.
I wanted to make a quick point too that just came to me. Like I said, I'm teaching myself too. Stuff is popping out at me, right? So we just read that his sister stood afar off, right, to see what would happen. Now, a lot of times in discretion, there's always a watchman or a spy or somebody that stands by, right? Even Rahab, in her discretion, she was a watchman or a spy, right? Even in the book of Judith, there was watchmen and spies to see what was going on, right? Even in this situation with Moses, her sister played a pivotal role too, because who knows, if she never saw Pharaoh's daughter come, she might not have been able to go back and tell what happened, and Moses' mom might not have been able to be put in the view of Pharaoh's daughter to even be able to nurse her daughter, right? So everything is done with prudence in the Bible, right? Anybody know what prudence is? Who can give me the definition of prudence?
Having care for the future.
Right? Having care for the future, right? The Bible says a prudent man looks well to his going. So you're pretty much looking at all the options that could possibly happen in the future, and you're taking care of it before it happens, or you're preparing yourself before it happens, right? Are we on verse 6 or 7? All right, let's read verse 6.
And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby wept. And she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrew children.
Right? And some people say she's able to tell it was a Hebrew child because of the circumcision, right?
Verse 7. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee?
Right?
And Pharaoh's daughter
Hold up. So this is key too, right? Because if she didn't say this to Pharaoh's daughter, she might have got an Egyptian nurse. She might have got a Canaanite nurse, right? She could have got a nurse of any other nation. But because she said this, Pharaoh's daughter's like, that is a good idea, right? So I'm just lining this up just to show that all these little things matter. A lot of times we overlook these little things and we just go straight to Moses and the rod and the miracles that he did before Pharaoh. But all these little things of discretion matter, right? Keep going.
And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. And the maid went and called the child's mother.
Right. So the child's mom, Moses' mom, was able to nurse him. You know how hard it has to be discreet, knowing that that's your son, but somebody else is treating it like their son, right? For a time, the Most High, he's seen us operating under these other gods and goddesses. He's seen us pretty much calling other people mom and dad, right? And so even when Christ came on the scene, he had to have a certain level of discretion because how far things have gotten, right? And so when we think about that, we understand that a lot of times when we use that word discretion ain't easy. It wasn't easy for Rahab to keep that secret in. I'm pretty sure she had thoughts of, who are these people? I don't know who these Hebrews are. They might lose this battle. I'm going to give them up, right? Judith could have been scary. Judith could have been like, nah, it's not going to work. It'll never work. I'm just a woman, right? And same thing with Esther. Esther had a scare as well, and Mordecai had to coach her up. So with discretion, even though salvation comes out of discretion, sometimes discretion can be very scary, right? Now I want to move on and talk about Noah, right? Let's talk about Noah real quick. A lot of people don't see the discretion in the story of Noah, but I'm going to try to point it out to you guys, right? We're going to go to Noah and we're going to go to chapter 6 and verse 9. Chapter 6 and verse 9 of Genesis, my bad. Genesis 6 and 9, right? Go ahead.
The book of Genesis, chapter 6 and verse 9. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was a just man and perfect in his generation, and Noah walked with God. Right.
Noted that he was perfect in his generations. Right. So yes, it's possible for us to be perfect. I know what the world says. Nobody can be perfect. The Bible does not say that though. And the Bible also says through Christ we can do all things, right? Let's get to verse 10.
Verse 10. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
Right. Let's go to verse 11.
The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence.
Right. Come on.
And God looked upon the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted his way upon the earth.
Right.
And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them, and behold, I will destroy them with the earth.
Right.
Make thee an ark of gopher wood. Room shall thou make in the ark, and shall pitch it within and without pitch.
Right. And so God's giving instructions now, right? God is giving instructions. We got to pay attention to these instructions now. Let's go to verse 15.
Verse 15. And this is the fashion which thou shalt make of it.
Oh, Salakia. We're just going to stop right there at verse 14, right? So we all know the story of Noah, right? I'm going to show you guys the discretion, right? And we can go through the rest of Genesis 6 and go through all of the instructions, right? One thing that God never instructed Noah to do was to call the people and warn them. I know how the movies teach it. I know how churches teach it. Or, they thought Noah was crazy, but that's not written in the Bible. Noah had a certain level of discretion, and he paid attention to what God told him to do, right? And that's important because when we go to the New Testament, it's gonna make an emphasis on something, right? Let's go to Genesis chapter 7 and verse 1, right? Because he ended up giving a bunch of instructions, but he also kind of ended the instructions or concluded them in the next chapter, which was Genesis 7 and verse 1.
The book of Genesis chapter 7 and verse 1. And the Lord said unto Noah, come thou and all thy house into the ark.
Right.
For thee have I seen righteous before me in this generation.
Right. He didn't say that, hey, there's a few others that are righteous in this generation. He didn't say go look for the others that are righteous in this generation. He gave him instructions and said, hey, you come in this ark, because he's seen that he was righteous in this generation. He didn't say, make it be known that the world about to be ended. We have a narrative that we think Noah was shouting to the rooftop, the world about to end. We watch the VeggieTales, they make it seem like he an old dude that just sounds crazy to everybody. But Noah had to be discreet. Can you understand the fact that there is not written in the Bible that Noah reached out to anybody? So if he was being discreet enough, and we know what came with Noah, the ark and salvation, right? He was being discreet enough to know the earth is going to be destroyed. Now, I know how we've always seen it, but if we flip it and say, you know what, he was a master of discretion, you know how hard it must be to keep that from people that you see every day, that you know that the earth is finna be destroyed. It's kind of like us when we go to our work, right? We go to work, and some of us, we spread the truth at work. Some of us, we stay to ourselves. We're discreet to a level when everybody's up in an uproar at work about what's going on in the news and things of that nature. And we sitting back like, yeah, they just don't know this place about to cave. Yeah, they don't know that this place almost over with. Yeah, they still got hopes for this place. We're being a certain level of discreet, right? But for Noah to know that the whole earth was about to be wiped out and all he was called to do was get the animals, that's some hard discretion, right? Let's read verse 2.
Verse 2, and of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by sevens, the male and his female.
Right.
And of the beasts that are not clean by two, the male and his female.
Right. So I know everybody's like the ark is, 2 of each animal, but we see of the clean animals, he got 7 of them. That's another thing that goes over people's head, right? It wasn't 2 by 2. It was 2 by 2 of the unclean, but by the clean, it was 7, right? And once again, I'm just reading this to show y'all through these instructions, he was never instructed to go get man, to go find other families, right? Verse 3.
Verse 3, of fowls also of the air by 7, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth.
Right? To keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. He didn't say nothing about no humans yet, right? And he doesn't. But I say that to say this, right? Let's go to 1 Peter 3 and 20. 1 Peter 3 and 20. Right?
Yep.
You there?
Yep.
Q said he's getting there. All right, let's go ahead and read that.
The book of 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 20. Which sometimes were disobedient, when once the long suffering of God waited in the days of Noah, while the ark was preparing, wherein few, that is, 8 souls were saved by water.
Right, only 8 souls were saved by water, right? As the ark was preparing, wherein few, and we all know that the kingdom is for few, right? So look, we know that the broad way to destruction. And we know that straight is the gate, right? We know that it's only a remnant going to be saved. So not everybody's coming. Not everybody's called to come, right? Not everybody's chosen to come, right? Same thing here. The ark was only prepared for few people. And those few people was the 8 souls that were saved by water. Now, those 8 souls, right? Remember what it said. The man that led that household, right, was perfect in his generation. So that's telling us that we ourselves, if we want salvation, we got to be perfect. But nonetheless, another example of what? Discretion leading to salvation. Because Noah had to be discreet in order to save his family, right? And not only save the family, save the earth, right? Let's move on. Let's move along, right? Another thing I want to call to memory is this. Moses, right? We talked about Moses' mom. Moses himself, his mission, he was scared and hesitant when he was called, right? Now we're getting into the title. Such a time as this. He was scared and hesitant. He came up with every excuse in the book, right? He even told the Lord after they came out of Egypt, he told him what? Please kill me. He said, if you deal with me thus, please kill me, right? And so Moses was scared and hesitant. Who else was scared and hesitant? Noah, right? Had to be scared. And I speak as a man, but if I'm Noah, I'm thinking he's scared and hesitant too, right? Another one. Who we're talking about today? Well, before that, let's talk about the ones we've already talked about. Rahab, I'm sure she was scared and hesitant, right? And so all of this I'm saying is discretion sometimes leaves you scared and hesitant, but sometimes you're called for a certain time because everything that leads after discretion, a lot of the times, is salvation, right? Let's go to Esther 4:11. Right? We're going to read through 16.
The book of Esther, chapter 4, starting at verse 11.
Right?
All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come into the king, into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come unto the king these 30 days.
Right? And so, common sense tells us, like, Esther had good reason to be scared, right? We're at the point now where, Mordecai is telling Esther, hey, go ask the king because our people's suffering. And she's like, man, you really asking me to commit suicide, right? Because this king has that much power. And, a lot of times in our day-to-day lives, right, or in our certain situations, right, a lot of times in our certain situations, it could be something as small as something on the job. It could be something like family related, friendship related, church related, right? It could be something small, but a lot of times when we're called to do something, it could be very scary. Right? A lot of times when we're called to do something, we may know that we need to do it, but it could be very scary, right? It could be very nerve-wracking. It could be something as simple as just having to talk to somebody that's in power like her. You may want to ask your boss for a raise. That might be scary to you, right? You may need to tell a friend something that's probably some hard news to take on, but you need to do it for a reason. Right? Or you may, God may have spoke to you about a certain situation with a family member or something, and you know how that family member is going to take it, but you still got to say it, right? So there's things in our life that we're called to do that sometimes, we're scared to do. Let's read verse 12.
Verse 12, and they told Mordecai Esther's words.
Right?
Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther. Think not with thyself that thou should escape in the king's house more than all the Jews.
Right? He's pretty much saying you got a better chance than anybody else. You are best chance. Right? Any other Jew go in there, it's over with. But remember the favor that he had on you. Right? Go ahead.
Verse 14. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place.
Right. And so I want to make an emphasis real quick right here. It comes to that nerve-wracking point in your life when you're called to do something where for a fact deep down inside, right? I can either not do it or I can do it. You start weighing out the pros and the cons. The pros and the cons come out and you trying to tally up which one. But a lot of times, sometimes there's more cons than pros. And you should still make the decision to do it, right? And like I said, you got to be led by the Holy Spirit. That was my point of emphasis earlier was, you know, the Holy Spirit is going to walk with us on our day-to-day. She's going to try us. It says it's going to torment us by her laws. It's not going to be a fun walk to be discreet. It's not going to be a fun walk to be chosen. It's not going to be a fun walk to make those decisions, right? Let's keep reading.
Continuing in verse 14. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this?
Right. So precept that comes to mind is, you know, what's the point of gaining the whole world and, you know, losing your soul? Right. He's saying you can not do nothing and save your life, but everybody else gonna die. You're not even gonna have no heritage no more. You're not gonna have no nation. Right. And he said what the title of this video is, right? Who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? So this is the part in your life, right? This is the part in your life where what? Where you start getting to a rock and a hard place, and then you remember the testimonies that God brought you through, right? And you start saying, hold up, I'm weighing out the situation, and God lined this up. Because I remember I didn't even know Buddy had moved to this state, and we was able to talk, and he introduced me to this person, and now I'm in this position to do this, and you start lining stuff up. And so that's what he's saying, who knows, such a time as this. Such a time as this is you're a person of another nation, and you became his queen. He favored you among everybody else. He done raised you to glory, gave you everything that you wanted. And who's to say God didn't have that happen to you for such a time as this, right? And remember, she was discreet through this all, right? Because Mordecai told her not to do this. So right now, the nation is thinking what? The nation is thinking there's no hope. They probably still don't know that Hadassah is their people. Just like the nation, when we was in Egypt, we didn't know Moses was our people. Just like the 12, the 11 sons, the 11 brothers, when they went up, they didn't know Joseph was their brother, right? Discretion goes a long way because you attack them from the inside, right? That and whenever we see these discretions, we go down the line of everything we just listed today. Rahab attacked from the inside, Judah attacked from the inside, Moses attacked from the inside, Noah. You know, I mean, when we go through it, discretion, you know, the salvation comes from the unknown. And when we look back at that, you know what that reminds me of is Hebrews, what, 11:1, right? It is 11:1, right? Yeah, faith becomes what? By hearing the word of God, right? Right? And it does not come by sight. It comes by, you know, the evidence of things, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen, right? So discretion kind of plays into faith where it's the things that's unseen, right? Let's read verse 16.
Verse 16. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise. And so will I go unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish.
Right. So when we're chosen for such a time, whatever that time might be in your life, you know, it comes with a certain confidence to where whether you live or die, whether good or bad, whether you get fired or not, whether somebody ends up hating you or not, you do it anyway. And that's why we're kind of looked at as the black sheep in our friend groups, our family, at our jobs, because we're not afraid of the consequences, because we know ultimately whatever happens, that's what God wanted to happen, right? She's saying, hey, if I perish, I perish. That's the certain confidence that she got. Moses eventually got the confidence when God kept reassuring him, you know, he got the confidence to go before Pharaoh, whether I live or whether I die, right? And that's all it is knowing that whatever that time is for you, right? You were put in that place for such a time as this. Once you start keeping the commandments, you start following God, you got to understand that you no longer order your steps. He's the one ordering your steps now. So whatever trial you're faced before, you're literally there for such a time as that. He lined that up, right? And I want to end with this, right? And I think we all know this precept very well. We're going to read Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5, and starting at verse 1. You're good. Wisdom of Solomon 5 and verse 1. I don't know if we're gonna read through verse 4. I think we might read through verse 4.
Right?
Yep, go ahead.
The wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5, starting at verse 1. Then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness.
That's that confidence.
Before the face of such as have afflicted him.
Right? Yeah, they had the power to kill us, but guess what? We're gonna stand in great boldness, right? Go ahead.
And made no account of his labors.
That's that discretion. Made no account of the discretion. They didn't know what was going on behind closed doors. Why? Because the Lord lined it up. Right? Verse 2.
Verse 2. When they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear.
Right?
And shall be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation.
That discretion comes with salvation. They're gonna be amazed at the strangeness of salvation because it's been hidden. The key factor of salvation been hidden. We always say with us, little old us, the minority group, right? Everybody gonna be amazed when they see our salvation because we've been hidden in the earth. We've been hidden in plain sight though, because we on the TV screens, we on the radio, we in front of everybody's face, but nobody would expect us to have the strange salvation. So God is literally playing the discreet part right now, right? Let's keep going.
So far beyond all that they looked for.
Right? When we thought there was nowhere else, right? They didn't know Esther was going to be the queen to help deliver them, right? When they didn't think there was nowhere else, right? Nothing else to do. It was just give up, right? Me and the brother was talking about Judith earlier today, and I'm pretty sure they just gave up, right? They fortified the city, right? And the city was surrounded. They cut off their water supply, cut off their food supply. They were forced to fast, and I'm sure they just gave up ready to die. And they didn't know that Judith had the wisdom that she had and that she was gonna go out there and win everything back. And Judith was getting on to the elders like, hey, what y'all in a frenzy for? Right? And she went ahead and she did what she did in the middle of the night. She got up, it said that she got up at midnight. That's discretion. And through that discretion came salvation, right? Let's keep reading.
Verse 3. And they, repenting and groaning for anguish of spirit, shall say within themselves, this was he whom we had sometimes in derision and in proverb of reproach.
Right? So when we come to that moment where it's like we're weighing the pros and cons out, we come to that moment, we got to make the big decision. That thing that we're in derision with, it's gonna be a reproach, bro. It's not gonna matter. And once you get that in your head, you'll get that confidence that comes with doing the thing that nobody else would do. You'll get that confidence in doing that thing that will get you labeled as crazy, right? And then with that comes salvation, right? So we were all made for such a time as this, just like Esther was made for such a time like this. And it could be individual or it could be as a nation, right? But at the end of the day, we got to focus on keeping the commandments of God to stay perfect. And we got to understand that not everybody needs to know everything all the time, right? For example, I hope brother doesn't mind me saying this, but we had men's night and Ray told us, he got another means of income. Did he tell us that? No, he didn't need to. He didn't need to tell us that he'd been searching for 2 months, right? And until he got his blessing. Certain things you got to be discreet about, right? Certain things, only come through discretion. You know what I'm saying? And that's one of many examples in life, right? And I'm sure we all have examples in life where we had to be discreet. And Q told me the same thing. We was in the gym and Q was like, yeah, I've been ghost, bro, but God blessed me with a better job, X, Y, and Z. Maybe he had to be discreet and ghost for a minute. You know what I'm saying? And so when we go through that, man, we understand even in a bigger picture, discretion goes a long way, and we see it over and over in the Bible, right? And there's discretion on the left-hand side, right? We know that. And we know that, there's a lot of evil and darkness, but this discretion that we're talking about is more so safeguarding, right? So with that, I'm just going to say, Shalom. Hope, that encouraged everybody in the room. I hope that edified, it edified me, and I hope it edified you guys. Any last comments for anybody? Go ahead.
I say it reminded me of 3 things, right? One, discretion can lead to salvation, right? But also we see in the Bible, I think it was King Josiah who who let them folks come into his place, and pretty much the
King Hezekiah.
Hezekiah come, right? Let him come into his place, and on the contrary, it can bring salvation if you got discretion, but a lack of discretion can bring destruction, right? And we see that through the scriptures as well. Two more other examples that are great was even when our King Christ was born, right? They had to have the discretion to flee to Egypt. You know what I'm saying? And that was on both his parents, Joseph and Mary, to have that discretion to go to Egypt, right? Also, and ultimately led to our salvation, because if Christ was killed, it would have been a dead mission, you know what I'm saying, from the jump. But ultimately, the Most High, he's the king of discretion, right? To the point where he says, no man knoweth the hour when he's going to send his son back. You know what I'm saying? Not even his son, right? And I'm just led to believe that he probably wouldn't even tell his son, because he knew how much his son loved us and cared for us. He might give us a little tip, like, you know what I'm saying? And that's one thing that he has to keep discreet, because, us as black folks, as minority, we like to push the envelope. Let us get a tip off. Oh, it's gonna be on this date, or everybody wilding out to that week, to the night before, right? So the Most High, man, even in his right, he's discreet, just for the purposes of salvation and the people that truly deserve it, right? And so again, man, I thought that was funny too, because I was thinking about that, just thinking like, man, he probably couldn't even tell Christ, because Christ loved us so much. He probably would have, came out and told his disciples, and next thing you know, Peter telling folks, next thing you know, Paul telling all the Gentiles, and everybody know. And so I just think, man, the Most High, man, he's the king of discretion, and we should be like him.
Right. Christ himself was discreet too, because there were some things that he didn't tell his disciples, and then there were some things that he told his disciples not to say. Right.
A lot of feast days, he was in the back, and people was wondering where he was at. And he after everything he did, every place he went, he always tell people, see that you tell no man, or go and don't tell nobody. Don't tell nobody I'm here. Don't tell nobody you saw me. Right. And so, discretion
comes with salvation.
I think you had some.
You had some?
No, so I'm just reading a couple things. We don't need to comment. Talking about David knew about the Most High and his discretion. Keep not thy silence.
What is this? Where is this at?
Psalms 83. Starting in verse 1. I'm going to read 1 through 3. Keep not thy silence, O God. Hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thine enemies have made a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up their heads. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people, and consulted against thy hidden ones. Then Luke 168, again, going with the same thing about discretion, which the Most High called us hidden ones, and then salvation coming as part of that.
That is a mighty precept, though, because like I said, man, the Most High God, he hid us multiple times, right? We've been hidden. Even when sometimes we have to go into hiding, it's a certain level of discretion, right? Where, for example, when we was trying to bring the walls of Jericho down, right? He told them what? He said, don't nobody make a sound. He said, don't make, who knows, if somebody would have made a sound, man, we probably wouldn't have made them walls come down. You know what I'm saying? And so it's always been a certain level of discretion required with our salvation. And so the mass discretion is the fact that we are the hidden ones, right? But go ahead with your other one.
Starting in verse 67 through 69, Luke 1. And his father Zacchaeus was filled with the Holy Spirit and prophesied, saying, Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, for he hath visited and redeemed his people, and has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David. Again, David recognizing that salvation comes through discretion.
Hey, I was just gonna say, appreciate the lesson. But with Noah, could you say that was like a form of baptism?
Yeah, I always kind of describe it as that. I always tell people, I kind of share with people, like, when you look at John the Baptist, he himself said that I baptize with water, but one will come after me and baptize you with fire, right? And the Holy Ghost. I always look at it as it's the same thing with the earth. The earth was baptized with water, and we know it's going to get baptized and purified with the lake of fire next, right? And we know that the kingdom comes after that. So I always looked at it as a mirror, right? We getting baptized as individuals, but also the earth going through the same thing, right? Baptism of water and the baptism of fire, all for purification's sake. So that's a good point to make.
But he even asked us to be discreet when he says stuff like, cast not your pearl before the swine, right? So it gives you the opportunity to discern when to be discreet and when it's okay to, let your light shine, right? So even like with the birth of Christ, when they fled to Egypt, they were able to discern who to keep that from. So you couldn't tell everybody who's going to go to Egypt because, just so many backbiters and snakes in the Bible. Somebody could have told Herod, right? But they chose to only tell Elizabeth, right? You know what I'm saying? Somebody that she could trust. And it's the same thing, man, all throughout the Bible. He's training us up to make those decisions on when to have discretion and when to know your brother and your sister. You know what I'm saying? But come.
Anybody else have anything stood out? Anything?
Like I say, you know what I'm saying? The lesson, you know what I'm saying? There's always times to, be discreet, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes with being discreet is being humble, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes when you're not discreet, it can be pride, you know what I'm saying? I gotta get this out, I gotta rush, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Sometimes you have to take a moment of humbleness, and that helps with discreet.
Right. Being meek and humble, man, it goes a long way because, like, a lot of times, and it's cliche, people always say this, they don't know what goes on behind closed doors, right? And usually when somebody says that phrase, it's to mean there's good things that's going on behind closed doors. There's efforts being made behind closed doors. There's things being pushed behind closed doors in the positive direction that people don't see, right? And that's ultimately discretion, right? Man, all of us in here have probably had conversations behind closed doors to help people. All of us have probably been charitable behind closed doors to help people. All of us have probably tried to wake people up behind closed doors, right? That nobody knows about. It wasn't recorded. It wasn't jotted down. Only you and that person or you and those people or you and that situation will know, right? But ultimately, from that discretion, we'll see a lot of salvation from it. We'll see a lot of increase from it, right?
That's crazy, bro. Because literally, he literally tells us to have discretion when it comes to praying, charity, and fasting. Literally, all three of those things, he requires us to be discreet about in order to get an increase,
right? And he said,
breakthrough.
And what does he say about the fasting? He says to do it in secret so he can what? Bless you openly. Or he says that with charity. He said that with charity, right? He said it with all three, right? Do it in secret, he'll bless you openly, right? Same thing that we've been going through this whole lesson, right? The discretion is secret, and he always is going to do it. He's going to reward us openly in front of everybody so everybody can see it. So everybody can, they might not have record of what you did behind closed doors, but they'll be able to question, why is this happening? The strangeness of their salvation, right? Anybody else?
At one precept,
go ahead.
This is 2 Chronicles, 20th chapter, starting the 14th verse. I'm going to read through the 17th verse. It says, Then upon Jahaziel, the son of Zechariah, the son of Benaiah, the son of Jael, the son of Mattaniah, a Levite of the sons of Asaph, came the Spirit of the Lord in the midst of the congregation. And he said, Hearken ye, all Judah, and ye inhabitants of Jerusalem, and thou King Jehoshaphat. Thus saith the Lord unto you, Be not afraid nor dismayed by reason of this great multitude, for the battle is not yours, but God. Tomorrow go ye down against them. Behold, they come up by the cliff of Ziz, and ye shall find them at the end of the brook. Behold, the wilderness of Jeruel. Ye shall not need to fight in this battle. Set yourselves, stand ye still, and see the salvation of the Lord with you, O Judah and Jerusalem. Fear not, nor be dismayed. Tomorrow go out against them, for the Lord will be with you.
Come on.
So this is a clear example of, you had 3 mighty armies that was coming against Judah. And it was very discreet on how the Most High is the Most High. He could have easily just slaughtered everybody right then, but the whole message and the whole what needed to be learned and understood in the way God had them to be discreet and how He had them to go on the side of the mountain, how He had them to just wait and not have to do anything, was the faith that they had to have and understand. Don't be afraid just because the odds look big, just because the circumstances look insurmountable.
Right.
You still have to stand still and know that God is God. And I mean, the lesson that you gave, the way you were able to interweave everything together, to pull that together, to make everything come together. I've never heard it. I've never heard it precept brought together like that. So that was very impactful.
Come on, man. Discretion goes a long way, man. And like I said, man, this stuff was coming to me as I'm reading it, so I know it's not me. You know what I'm saying? It's not me. It's definitely the Most High, bro. And that's only because when you're searching for such a time as this, I could have said, you know what? I don't have no lesson for today. I'm gonna just do something that I did 2 years ago or a year ago, right? Because I still have my lessons and stuff. But I was like, you know what? If you chosen for such a time like this, just like what you said in your precept, even though God gave them insurance, they could have still got scared and turned back around, right? And like I said, such a time as this, it's not gonna be an easy decision to make. You're gonna seem crazy for making it. Oh, it's 20,000 of them, it's only 1,000 of us. We crazy for going out there on that hill, but we going. You know what I'm saying? And so that's like us in every aspect of our life, man. You know what I'm saying? And we just got to keep that in mind and keep in mind the end goal, right? But if nobody got anything else,
Another form of discretion, man. Since we rolling, man. But I know it's PURIM, but coming up pretty soon is Passover. That was another form of discretion when they told them to put the blood on the doorpost, right? They told all the Israelites to do that, but I'm pretty sure God is true to His word. If the word got out to an Egyptian and they did it, I'm sure it probably would have passed over them as well. You know what I'm saying? But again, knowing to discern who's your brother and your sister and who's not. You know what I'm saying? Who's swine and who's not, right? This discretion is definitely seen throughout the Bible. And I want to piggyback on Brother Yoel and Brother Q. It was a good lesson. It's something that I really didn't even think about either until today. That's why all these things popping up in my head, and I'm saying, hey, one more thing, but come.
All praises. So with that, man, this is our PURIM, and like we always say, like Christ always says, if you're not gathering, you're scattering. So we're trying to gather together like we're doing on this feast day, right? In these last days, so that we can be as one when Christ returns. But with that, we say shalom.
Shalom.